Last time I did God create everything, we were looking at the very small, the human genome, DNA. Well, now we're looking at the very big. In fact, we're looking at the entire universe, and I'm asking the question, where did the universe come from? And we're going to look at the Big Bang. I remember the first time I heard about the Big Bang, I was slightly worried because I thought, well, this is a scientific theory, and maybe it somehow disproves God. But actually, what I'd like you to do is think. In the same way I was a bit reluctant to think first time I heard about it, please think. And at the end of this, you have to ask yourself the question, does the Big Bang, do these scientific facts, do they make the existence of God more likely or less likely? Anyway, before we get into what it means, a bit of an explanation about what Big Bang actually is. Two scientists there, Georges Lemaitre and Alexander Friedman, working independently, using Einstein's general theory of relativity, predicted that the universe was getting larger, was expanding. They were just using theory and they were making these predictions. And what they said is the universe actually started at a single point in time and space called a singularity, and there was a huge explosion of energy, and it's been expanding ever since and gradually slowing down. And that huge explosion is called the Big Bang, a huge amount of energy. And as the energy cooled down, then eventually solar systems, suns, stars, and planets started to come into existence. That was the theory, but at that point, there was no evidence for it. What about the evidence? Let's look at that. There are two main pieces of evidence to support the theory, the Big Bang. First one was discovered by accident by a man called Arno Penzias, and he measured what's called cosmic microwave background radiation. And he measured this radiation, like I said, by mistake, and he realized that the universe has got this a very small amount of radiation left over in all of the universe. In other words, if there was this Big Bang, then there should be some residual, some leftover energy throughout the universe, and that's what he measured. It's excellent evidence that there was a Big Bang, an explosion of energy. The second piece of evidence was discovered by somebody called Edwin Hubble. You've probably heard of him. He's got a space telescope named after him. And he measured the energy from distant stars, and he found it was shifted to red wavelengths. Well, what does that mean? It means that distant stars are actually moving away from us. Again, that's excellent evidence that the universe started at a single point, a huge explosion, and all the planets and all the stars have been moving away from each other in what's called a Big Bang. So that's the evidence, and pretty much every scientist accepts that the Big Bang is an explanation of the start of the universe. You might imagine that most scientists would welcome a new theory, and that this new scientific theory actually makes believing in God less likely. But the opposite is true, because before the Big Bang, the current theory, or the original theory, was that the universe was eternal. It had always existed, which is very convenient, because if there's no start, then we don't have to worry about a creator or where it came from. But suddenly, the universe had a start, which does agree with the Bible, and makes some people nervous. You can see a couple of quotes there, one from Professor Stephen Hawking saying that most people don't like the idea that time is a beginning. Why? Because it smacks of divine intervention. In other words, if there is a beginning, well, how did it start? Who started it? And there's another one there, Sir Arthur Eddington. He was actually the person who Georges Lemaitre was working for. And it says, philosophically, the notion of a beginning of the present order of nature is repugnant. I should like to find a genuine loophole. And here's one other one which I haven't put in there. This is Sir John Maddox, a former editor of Nature, and he pronounced the idea of a beginning thoroughly unacceptable because it implied an ultimate origin of our world and gave creationists ample justification for their beliefs. And there's another quote there. There's three scientists. One of them is Alexander Vilenkin, got a Nobel Prize for proving that the universe is expanding. And there's a quote from him, and it says, scientists can no longer hide, it's an interesting word, isn't it, hide behind a past eternal universe. In other words, science no longer thinks that the universe is eternal. It hasn't always existed. It had a start. And he says there's no escape. They have to face the problem of a cosmic beginning. Well, why is it a problem? Well, I'll explain that in the next slide. We've seen so far that the Big Bang agrees with the Bible that there was a start to the universe. And some scientists are very unhappy with this because they'd much rather believe in a universe which lasted forever, which was eternal. The cosmological argument, which is outlined here, basically says anything which started to exist, like the universe, must have a cause. So that's the problem that scientists face, or some scientists didn't like very much, is the fact that the universe came into existence or started with a Big Bang must mean there's a cause to the universe. Something or someone has created it. Now you might be thinking, well, I don't particularly like the Bible, or maybe you're thinking, well, I don't particularly like the Big Bang. But it's interesting, they both agree with each other. There was a start to the universe, and because there was a start to the universe, there must be a cause or a creator of the universe. What are the choices left to us now? Let's have a look. Here's our first choice, disprove the Big Bang. So if we don't want to think about a creator, then the best way to do that is to think of an alternative to the Big Bang, because then the universe can exist forever and we can get rid of the creator. You can see there's 5 different models there. Scientists have been trying very, very hard over the last few decades to get rid of the Big Bang. And there's 5 theories there. Steady state is one of note. That's by Fred Hoyle. That was his theory. There's another one there. Quantum gravity, you might just be able to make it. Stephen Hawking. That was one of his theories. Here's the sad news. Every single one of those theories has failed and is no longer accepted by scientists. So we're back to the Big Bang. So there is a start to the universe. So trying to find an alternative, people are still trying. So far, we haven't found an alternative. So the first choice, get rid of the Big Bang, get rid of the start of the universe, hasn't worked. So what about a second choice? Well, here's the second alternative, is try and find a reasonable explanation for the cause or the start of the universe. And there's 3, these are the 3 most popular, they're called theories, they're not really theories, they're the 3 most popular ideas at the moment. The first one, there's one there, it basically says, there's no point trying, okay, the universe just exists. There's no point asking where it came from, it just is, and there's no point asking. And one of the proponents of that is somebody called Peter Atkins. You can see a picture of him there. He actually lectured me in quantum chemistry. I have to say his lectures were largely incomprehensible, and about as comprehensible as that idea. It's basically we're just not even going to try. The second theory or idea, which was very much supported by Stephen Hawking and Paul Davies. In Stephen Hawking's last book, which is called The Grand Design, he makes a claim. It's quite an audacious claim. He basically says, according to Stephen Hawking, the laws of physics, not the will of God, provide the real explanation as to how life on Earth came into being. Hawking argues the Big Bang was the inevitable consequence of these laws. Here's a quote: because there is a law such as gravity, the universe can and will create itself from nothing. Oh, hang on a second. Well, that really does sound like science fiction. Why does it sound like science fiction? Well, let me give you an example to try and explain. Frank Whittle is famous for making the first person to make the jet engine. So that jet engine, now where did that jet engine came from? Well, I think Frank Whittle got some material, and he's obviously got a great mind, an engineering mind, and he used his intelligence to make a jet engine. But that's not what this theory says. This theory says, no, he didn't. The laws of physics made that jet engine. So you've got a choice. The jet engine has suddenly appeared out of nowhere using the laws of physics. Or, that doesn't sound very likely, does it? Or somebody, Frank Whittle, uses intelligence, used some material to make the jet engine. So you can see I'm pretty skeptical about theory 2. I don't think laws of physics can make anything. Okay, they can't make material. They can explain how material responds and works, but it can't create anything. The final theory is the latest one from Stephen Hawking. It's called the many-world or multiverse hypothesis. And because, to be fair to him, he realises the chance of having life on Earth are incredibly, incredibly slim. The chances are almost negligible. So how are we going to explain it? Well, instead of just having one universe with a very, very small chance of life, what you could have a trillion universes. And those trillion universes, we're the lucky ones. We're in the universe where the conditions were perfect for life to exist. The other universes, they don't exist. Now then, again, I find that quite, which is easier to believe? Trillion universes and completely random chance of having life, or one universe and one creator. You have a think about it. Again, save the best till last. There's not me. You can make a choice. Yeah, I think the Big Bang seems to make sense. You might not like it, but you'd probably agree the universe did have a beginning. Well, how did it begin? What created it? You might think those scientific theories are pretty valid. They don't sound very plausible to me. I find it much easier to believe that instead of a trillion universes, that With just one of them, life exists. I find it much easier to believe in the first verse of the Bible. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. It's much more plausible. I look around me, I see the universe, and I think God made it. One last slide, couldn't resist it. Our universe is a huge place. In the known universe, there are 10 to the 21 stars. That's 1,000,000,000,000,000,000 stars. Where do they come from? I love the economy of Scripture. In Genesis 1 it says, He made the stars also. Now what does that tell me about God? It tells me He is awesome. He created all those stars just by speaking. Awesome, mighty God. And one day I will stand before Him, and so will you. Will you be ready? Please think about these things.